The first 3 seasons for Mark Stoops at Kentucky, you can say, were rocky ones. I mean, think about it. Only 12 wins and 24 losses. But you give Kentucky credit for sticking with the guy, and it's paid off because the last 2 seasons have been back-to-back winning ones and back-to-back bowl appearances. So things on the up for Mark Stoops in Lexington. But entering year number 6 at UK, Stoops knows that he has a major decision to make. He and the coaching staff have to decide who's going to be the new quarterback, and whoever they go with would have never have played an FBS down. So really a lot of pressure to decide who's going to replace Steven Johnson. You got Terry Wilson, previously at Oregon, known as a runner and passer, or you can go with Gunnar Hoke, 6 feet 4 inches tall, known as more of a PPP, that's pure pocket passer. Right now, from the research I've done, it looks like Terry Wilson has the edge, but of course no decision has been made yet. Don't have to worry about who's going to carry the ball for Kentucky, because a guy that accounted for over 60% of their rushing total, yeah, and he's the leading returning rusher in the SEC, that's Benny Snell, over 1,300 yards on the ground, wow, and 19 touchdowns, a little more than 5 yards per carry. He now enters his junior year, and if he has another big year, you know, he could very well become the school's all-time leading rusher despite doing that in what would have been just 3 seasons. And yes, that possibility, of course, is out there as far as next season. Will he be back in Kentucky, or will he be making a lot of money in the NFL? It wasn't exactly a huge 2017 for Kentucky's passing attack, averaging less than 190 receiving yards per game. And by the way, that was 5th worst in the SEC out of 14 teams. Big reason for that, I think, was probably the absence of Jeff Badette. Now, you might remember 2 years ago, big-time receiver for the Wildcats, led the SEC in yards per catch, but decided to finish his career not in Lexington, but in Norman, Oklahoma, where last year he played his final season for my Sooners. I think he was a big absence for Kentucky's offense. Like I said, Garrett Johnson became the leading receiver last year, had 48 receptions, but now he's gone as well. So Kentucky, as far as proven receivers, they're kind of limited in this area. You do have Tavin Richardson. Richardson had 27 catches, 371 yards, but only 1 touchdown. Lim Bowden had only 17 receptions. But one player that could make a difference for Kentucky that they didn't have last year but did have previously, that's Dorian Baker, had an ankle injury that caused him to miss all of last year. So there's a weapon that you have that was not at your disposal in 2017. Offensive line, Kentucky's going to be in pretty good shape. 5 of the 6 come back, including the tight end C.J. Conrad. I expect he will be more used in the passing department. Last season, had 4 touchdown receptions. As far as the down linemen, 4 of the 5 do come back. Bunchy Stallings, probably the most talented of the bunch at the right guard position. Could be an all-SEC player. You do, however, have to address the left tackle issue. That's the one position that does not come back from last season's squad. Defense, Kentucky gave up 29 points per game. Not a good stat at all, but then again, I've seen worse. 8 of the top 10 tacklers do come back, but I would say of the 3 areas on Kentucky's defense, the line, the linebackers, and the secondary, the line is probably going to be the weakest area. Only 1 of the 3 come back. Kentucky, again, lining up with a 3-4 alignment. Adrian Middleton, the only full-time starter back, had 24 tackles. T.J. Carter did get some playing time last season. He had 18 stops. He's back. As far as the linebackers, you get 2 of the 4 back. Josh Allen was very productive in 2017, 66 tackles, 10.5 of those were for loss and 7 sacks. And Jordan Jones, you get him back at weak side linebacker, had 64 tackles. But you do lose 2 linebackers, including Denzel Ware, who decided not to finish his career at Kentucky. Instead, back in May, he announced that he was transferring to Jacksonville State. So that hurts a little bit as far as the outside linebacker goes. The Wildcats secondary returns all 4 starters from a year ago. But here's an alarming statistic. Of the 5 leading returning tacklers for the Wildcats, 3 of them from the secondary. And the top 2 leading returning tacklers are the 2 safeties. That tells you something. Mike Edwards had 97 stops, had 4 interceptions. Darius West, the other safety, had 85 tackles. And the corners were active last season in tackling. Derek Beatty, 49 stops, and Chris Westry had 34. I bring this stat up because the Wildcats were second to last in the SEC, 13th out of 14 teams in tackles for loss. They weren't getting near enough in this category. That meant the defensive line didn't do a good job in tackles for loss, and the linebackers weren't doing enough in tackles for loss. This meant that the secondary had to save the day and do more than their fair share in tackling. That trend cannot continue for the Wildcats. As far as special teams go, well, you got to replace the all-time leading place kicker in school history in Austin McGinnis, and it looks like they're going to go with a freshman at this position. The Wildcats schedule, I think it sets up for a 2-1 start after 3 games. That September 8th game at Florida, yeah, that won't be easy at all. Last season, though, Kentucky almost pulled off the upset, but lost at home to the Gators by 1 point. But this year you got to play with the Swamp. And then you look at the next 3 games, Mississippi State, South Carolina, at Texas A&M. It's going to be hard-pressed for Kentucky to try to get a W in any of those 3 games. Although last year, the Wildcats did go to South Carolina and pull off the upset. But you know the Gamecocks will be in massive revenge mode for that rematch. Second half of the schedule, hey, Vanderbilt should be a W. Even a shot at the victory is possible at Missouri. But then look at the month of November. In fact, for Mark Stoops, this trend has to change. His 5 years at Kentucky, in the month of November and the postseason, the Wildcats are just 5-18. There is potential at quarterback for Kentucky this season, but of course it is still an unknown, and the defensive line must get better to make life easier on the secondary. Do I think Kentucky makes it to a bowl game? Yes, but barely. I've got the Wildcats finishing 5th in the SEC East and a 6-win season prior to the bowl game. That's my look at Kentucky. See you next time.